So what I'm going to showcase here is something that we've been working on for the last little while, and happy to begin showing off to the world. So this is hopefully a site that you might recognize. This is exapro.net. This is the home for Exanet services. This will be kind of the main website that you would go to learn more about the service. If you're interested in using it, you can see some of the pages like pricing, partner, resources. So the one that I've been putting a lot of time into over the last little while, and I think Ken has as well, is this resources section. So this will be an awesome place. We have a couple articles already live, and we have more that will be coming over the next couple of weeks. But this will be a place to learn about different aspects of our network. We'll have a lot of different kinds of content here. So already we have some thumbnails made for things like press releases, some engineering looks into specific products or aspects like the relayer or infrastructure as well. So we have a couple of different categories along the top. I think one of the last couple items that we have to get finished off, one of them is making it so when you click these different items or whatever they might be, if they change in the future, then it brings up just the posts that are relating to that. But if I open one, for example, this erasure code overview, this is kind of a dedicated page. It's just exapro.net/erasure code overview. And it brings up a post that explains what erasure codes are and how they work for us. We have some diagrams to help kind of explain and visualize. Because I think that can be important because words, especially when it's a pretty technical article, they can go over your head sometimes, and it really can help to have a nice video piece or image to go along with it. So this is one of our articles and posts that we're going to launch with. We have some room on the left as well to do something with. So right here, in this case, I'm using it to kind of emphasize what erasure codes are and how they're important. But we could use that space for like summaries or quotes or anything like that. But I'm pretty pleased with this layout of the website. I think it's cool. We have a video in this article, for example. So this video that we're able to embed natively in the page. This was the recording from a week or two ago with the whole project and kind of network overview, where we encompassed a ton of different subjects, which I've broken down with timestamps here as well to help you not just be able to kind of articulate what it was that you have taken in, but also if you want to jump to certain sections, you can do that as well. I'm pretty pleased with this website or this post. And once again, since we've intentionally structured these URLs, that it isn't like exapro.net/blog/2022/September/whatever. These are dedicated pages, and I think we're going to treat them as that these are just pages on our website. We might update some of them with time and that kind of thing, but I think this is a really cool opportunity to help convey to potential customers, to people who've been around a long time, to convey to everybody who might be interested in learning more different parts of our network. So I think over the next couple of weeks, you can expect some guide and setup type content. You can expect maybe some industry and some comparisons potentially to other networks, all sorts of different content. And I think this is going to be a really diverse and informational hub to follow with time. And I think we're going to be pretty active here. So I'm really pleased to be able to show that to everybody.
I just want to kind of preface this with what's happened over the last few months and how we got to where we are and where we actually are, because one of the things that's always clear to me is that it's really difficult to keep everybody on the same page. And we do a lot of work to try and keep you all on the same page and so forth. So everybody should know that we had an idea to essentially launch this whole thing really late last year, then January, then April, then June. And, we hit the normal skids. I mean, we're building a pretty significant set of tools and products and so forth. And we hit a few, potholes and speed bumps as you do. Some unforced errors and some, just normal things that, were bound to happen. And, we could have jammed it through. I mean, it would have been easy enough for us to just say, well, look, let's just, do it and then accept whatever it is. But we made some calls to not, and unfortunately, it's kind of hurt us, obviously in certain ways. But I think in the end, it's going to really skew very well to our benefit when it's all said and done that we didn't launch prematurely. And we still may be premature, by the way, because we're building a really big thing. And so, yeah, we put 3.5 years or 4 years into it. But at the end of it, there's a lot going on here, a lot of moving parts. So as we were getting ready to sort of call it good and put, a stamp of, completed on it, that's when all of a sudden we got into the contractor issues. And that was a good one to have because, you don't want to end up having contractor issues when the thing's live and you've got real data at stake. Turns out we didn't actually lose any data for the renter, the relayer, because of the erasure coding that we use. But at the end of it, a lot of providers did have some significant data drops and so forth. And as we've talked about, we're working to bring that back on board. But we're now kind of at a place where we feel okay about that. There's still some potential for contract renewal failures. There's still this weeding out of where we are with the network itself and licensed providers and so forth. There are still some weird, things that are going on with collateral and some of that stuff. And there are still some, providers out there that don't pay attention to what's going on their units and, may not have enough collateral coins in there or may not have the settings correct, may have too few collateral to, be able to provide the storage correctly. And so ultimately, there are still the potential for some of those data drops, but it's vastly lower, and we think it's probably low, single digits that we'll see going forward. We've got some mechanisms to alert us now, so I think all in all, I think we feel okay and very comfortable with moving forward and calling it, live. So what the first announcement I'm going to make, and you may not actually have known this, right? I mean, if you haven't actually used the product or talk to somebody else about using it. The product itself, even though it's been live to people that had these coupons, you guys, right, the people that were storage providers, we really didn't have any public coupons out there, and you couldn't actually pay money to use our service right up until today when we turn it on, or later today when we finally turn it on. So it's really correct to say that we have not launched yet until we pull that trigger. And the good news is we're about to pull that trigger. So the really big take home from this announcement is that the network is really, truly, and genuinely about to go live. Now, I don't expect that we're going to have, a bunch of people beating down the doors trying to throw money at us for a number of reasons. One is we've priced ourselves right in the middle between the bottom feeders and the gold standard. Whether that ultimately works out long term or not, we'll find out. But it may be a limiter in the very beginning to people just diving in and storing a bunch of stuff on the network. We'll see. The other thing is that we have to build some coupons in there to get some free storage for the public so that they can try out the service. That'll happen over the next day or two. And then the other thing that we've talked about at length over the last couple of meetings is, we haven't done any marketing at all. There's no brand recognition about us. There just isn't at this point. Nobody knows who we are. Nobody knows we're out there. Nobody in the real world of, buying, storage and so forth. And I'm hard at work right now to get that money into the project so that we can get out there and do the brand recognition marketing that we need to do so that ultimately, we can start to generate a lot more storage above and beyond just what we're hoping to get working with partners. But for the first, whatever it's going to be, few weeks, it'll be live. People can refer people there. People can stop in, they'll be able to grab a coupon and do some stuff. And we'll start to find out, whether our billing and our accounting side is working really good and all of that sort of thing. So that's the great news. The first announcement is that really after 4 years, not quite, we're about a month away from 4 years, maybe 6 weeks away from 4 years. We are finally actually here. We made it, and it's a pretty amazing day. And I think we're finally able to all breathe a sort of a sigh of relief, because we thought we were here a lot of times, but it's just really a complicated thing that we built. So it is what it is. I want to talk just a little bit about some of the ways we expect to onboard, and then I'm going to talk about our second announcement. So we've talked about this before, about partners being really important to us, and I'm just going to kind of go over that really quickly, what that means. So right now, what happened, with this whole migration to cloud services for archival, for websites, for all manner of things that are going on. What you had was you had Amazon starting out in the the zero zeros, where they built this thing out and said, well, because we need it, and then what happened is they realized, well, if we need it, others are going to need it, so we better provide this and see how it works. And then slowly but surely it ate the company and became the big profit center that a lot of people don't even realize. The Amazon site doesn't make all that much money compared to AWS, or at least it's discounted significantly. But the deal there is there's two sort of competing notions about AWS. One is it's really expensive, and ultimately it's a challenge to really understand how much you're going to pay every month. And every single organization that gets really tied up with them ends up having one of those months where they have to explain to the CFO why the bill just blew a hole and everything. But the other side of it is that the service is really, really, really good, and people tend to like the service a lot, and they've made it very hard to escape. Once you actually upload a bunch of data there, it costs a lot of money to pull your data out, right? If you move your data, migrate it from them to somewhere else, and ultimately they make a lot of little, gatekeeper type things that make it sort of difficult. It's certainly possible to run your storage on another cloud and then run EC2 instances with AWS, or run, Aurora, or run, any other kinds of services that bolt on top. Those services that we hope to build certainly one day. So the only thing is that the migrations get a little bit pricey and challenging, and so consequently it's hard to peel people away. So what happens then is you get people like Wasabi that show up, Backblaze to a degree, although they don't really do it the same way as Wasabi does. That whole thing is another way to approach it, to say 80% off, and we'll get all of our business that way. And I've had it suggested to me, well, you need to cut your price down to $1. And then if you do $1, you'll win all the business, because Wasabi's like 6 and they'll drop it to 5 and blah, blah, blah. And I just resist that, because at the end of the day, well, first of all, if I drop it to $1, every one of those examiners is going to lose money. If I drop it to $1, what'll happen is we will probably get some business, but my gut tells me it won't be the business we want. It'll be business that's not quite as rich and valuable as what we ought to get. So I don't think that's really the right strategy, except there is kind of a way that I think that we can get there. And that's really how I'm focusing right now. And what I mean by that is, so we know with like Helium that they went from 4,000 nodes to literally, I haven't looked at it recently, but I think it's over 1 million. Over a span of about 2 years, maybe a little under 2 years. And that was driven partly by a lot of marketing and advertising, and it was driven by coin price, and it was driven by, just the whole market posture of where we were in the macro cycle. And they had a lot of money. They have a huge budget, and they have, a big coin emission that they get dumped on them every month that they can just, sell into the community and, do what they need to do. So, it made for a pretty easy run up. The thing is, we saw in December that you don't necessarily need all that to grow rapidly. You can grow pretty rapidly without all that, as long as the tokenomics work correctly and you're ready to accept the growth. It turns out that our tokenomics can be ready. They weren't in December. We were not really. We got caught off guard with that crush of people. But at the same time, we understood how and why, and we knew it could always happen. And so it forced us to put the brakes on, and we did, right? But the deal here is that now that we're kind of like in this place, we're about ready for that next growth push as soon as we can make it happen. And so that's part and parcel of what I'm doing to bring money into the project. Because part of the money that we're going to be bringing into the project is for marketing directly. Part of it is for buying, a large exchange and market making activities underneath it to absorb mining emission and to ensure that there's always liquidity for people that want to trade and to encourage larger traders to show up who probably would not be willing to put much onto South Exchange and go through their weird little Argentinian KYC thing. We're going to budget some of that money for coin marketing from the standpoint of, we're on this exchange now. We're not going to go out and do a bunch of dopey coin marketing. And we'll probably do some more of the YouTube work where we go out and really talk about where we are today. So that's part that's budgeted into our cap raise. Another part that's budgeted into our cap raise is our ongoing coin purchases, which we have to make. And so that's going to still continue to be there. And then, of course, our big part of our cap raise is budgeted towards personnel, which includes marketing and sales, as well as an application specialist and so forth. So, all things told, if we generate this in a relatively quick turnaround, and when I say that, I'm talking about 3 to 4 months, would be quick, then ultimately I think we're going to be ready in that period of time for the next major crush of growth. And then again, what will end up happening is all these new people will show up and it will get this exponential jump. And then all the people that came in December of last year will be the people like that came in, a year earlier, and we'll have those same kind of hero stories about, what their coins are worth and blah, 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 and how much they made and ROI. Not that I'm trying to talk the coin up because, that's not at all what I'm about here. The point I'm making is just that the things that we need to do in order to be successful, get on a major exchange, have plenty of liquidity, have plenty of market making, have the ability to let people know that that's where we were at. That kind of thing, has a tendency to work on coin price. Again, to us, coin price doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, the contracts work no matter whether the coin price is X or Y or Z. So that's not my goal, but I'm just saying, when we achieve all those things, the typical net effect of those is that you see an appreciation. And if that does happen, same way that it happened for helium, then I would expect to see those stories that we had from last year where the original people were in there. All right, so dancing around that, that kind of leads us to the next thing. Well, so where are you going to get, the 40,000 people that are coming on next? Well, the situation is there's a couple of places that can come from. Some of them are good and some of them are not so good. It wouldn't be so good for us to just go out tomorrow and say to all the Chia people, hey, you know what? It's time. Go ahead and bring over your 200 terabytes or whatever. The situation is that would not really help us right now. It would not really take us much up the road. But we've been talking to some people that have some pretty interesting ideas about our thing, and I've been trying to highlight this to people, but I just don't think we have the right kinds of folks in our community yet, and maybe not in our community ever, by the way. It may be more of a thing that happens in the XNS website. Maybe we set up a forum over there. Maybe we do another Discord. I don't know, but what we're talking about is we have something that none of these other clouds have. We have something that Wasabi doesn't have. We have something that AWS doesn't have, that none of them have, even, the people in crypto. And that's this interesting situation where, so Wasabi is kind of interesting because what Wasabi did, if you think about it, it's kind of like what we're doing. What Wasabi did is they went out and they rounded up all their friends that they knew that ran little data centers, medium and small data centers, and they stitched them all together into what looks like one big, larger data center. But they don't have that many of them, and they aren't that widespread. They're not very distributed. But it's a pretty good idea. I mean, what they did, they didn't have the ability to take it as far as we do. We can stretch it out so that there's an Examiner in every single house, right? That's pretty important because essentially when you can get, 10 million Examiners out there on the street, 100 million, when you can get numbers like, a storage drive providing Examiner software in like every set-top box or something along those lines, now all of a sudden you have distribution to die for. Well, here's the thing. Somebody's got to make those deals, right? Somebody's got to make those deals to go ahead and put Examiners into franchises, to put Examiners into set-top boxes, to put Examiners into, cellular network heads, head ends or things like that, or partnering up with other storage companies, who knows, even like a Wasabi, to provide sort of a back-end infrastructure for their front end that they're trying to do. And so that's what I'm talking about right now when we're talking about partners. And so, for instance, we're talking to one right now, and I'm just going to say it's not a done deal by any stretch. We're just in the exploration phase and chatting about it, but the qualification is clearly there. They certainly have the wherewithal to do what we're talking about doing. And right now it's just a matter of getting consensus and figuring out, if it makes sense and then doing it. But what we're talking about is they would essentially, they have locations scattered around far and wide enough that they could take between 1,000 and 5,000 Examiners and put them in around, the world. And in that process, what they would end up doing, they would install those Examiners, pay us full price. There wouldn't be a discount on the Examiners. They'd give us what we need. And then what would happen is that they would go out and use, their Examiners, obviously, for storage that they need. They have a partner organization that would use some of the Examiner storage that they need. And then, of course, they would, offer the storage to the general public for us out on the network, and they would earn back revenues just like you guys are earning back revenues. The difference is they also have channels where they can go out and bang on influencers and partners to go out and represent our storage and sell it into organizations so that they can go out and actually fill up the network at the same time. So they're kind of like the ideal partner for us because they get it, right? They get the whole thing. We don't want to go out and just be a partner that gets a 20% commission on your network. That's sexy and that's great, but I can get that anywhere, by the way. I can go get that at AWS. I can get that at Wasabi. I can get that at Backblaze. I can get that anywhere. Everybody wants me as a partner because I bring business in. So everybody gives me a discount. So it's really more me beating you up to get the most discount I can. Well, that's a pretty cool thing, but it isn't typically enough to really peel off those partners that we really want to peel off. But if the other side is that the partner actually can house, let's say 3,800 Examiners themselves, right? Now all of a sudden they can steer enough storage to the back end that essentially they can either, charge it internally as an expense and then, get a really nice expense break on it, or they can just cut the price, that they're willing to accept in terms of that storage and ultimately scissor off that cost profile on the bottom end. Now all of a sudden it's just the top end that has to be covered, right? It's just the expenses on the top, which are ours, marketing, the things that we do on top and so forth. And I've already told everybody that I'm willing to subsidize early adopter type players. So for the first couple of partners that come on board, they're going to see the ability to do exactly what I said at the beginning that we didn't want to do. End up in a situation where serious quantities of storage can be offered at $1 or less per terabyte. I mean, literally, they could be giving it away almost free for some significant period of time. And we think that that's ultimately going to drive some of these big deals. Now, what happens in that deal? There's a couple things that happens there. First of all, we get our cap raise, right? We get our money from the Examiner sale, whether it's software or hardware, and we're able to go ahead and use that to fund the things that I just mentioned, right? The coin listing, the engineers that we need to bring on, the other support personnel and so forth, and the marketing, especially the marketing. So we get that, and we don't have to surrender any equity. Right, we don't have to actually give them shares of stock or anything. This is just a product sale, actually. But it onboards the network and grows it out double immediately. And at the same time, it puts everybody in a position to win, 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 win. Now, you guys are going to be in a slightly deprecated position, but not much at all. You could say, well, yeah, but what if they only choose to use their own 3800 and they don't hit us at all? What if they don't put any storage on our providers? Well, I just don't think that's a thing, because what happens is they're so widely spread around the globe that when they start looking at latencies, they're going to realize, well, we need to fill up our units, but also in any given region, we'll probably have 3 or 5 or however many of our units, but then we'll have to go get 20, 30, 40, 50 out of the normal community, right? The people that are within 50 miles of us or within 100 miles of us. So I really don't see it as being a thing where too many of these early partners will be able to use their own things, unless some partner came along and said, we want to put in 100,000 nodes. Then maybe. But if somebody came along and said, we want to put in 100,000 nodes, and had the ability to back it up with enough storage to start populating 100,000 nodes, the word of mouth, the YouTube marketing, everything that would come out of that would cause you guys to win anyway. So, because the project would essentially just go crazy mooning. But the goal is probably to be a little bit more circumspect and bring people on in the thousands and do that continued ramp up that we're doing. I don't think we are ready to do the next step. I don't think we're ready yet to do the hockey stick thing where it just goes straight up. We've got a year or two before we want to really contemplate that. So anyway, I wanted to kind of put that out there and say we're now live, and that's the first step to getting to the second step. And the second step, I'm already working behind the scenes to find partners like this. You may know somebody who qualifies to be this kind of an organization that would be interested in this dual-sided, hey, we want to put in 1,000 miners and we want to also do the other side of the coin and be able to make the profits on both sides of the equation. We're really looking forward to that. If you do, definitely plug them into me. I'll take that call and we will effort that and make it happen. So really, really exciting times for us. We're starting to begin the whole process, and I just laid out for you sort of how we expect it to go over the next, several weeks, months. Okay. The second big announcement that we want to make is, if you go back to the sort of beginning when we started doing Examiner development, it was 2020, I think. And, we didn't really know exactly what the roadmap was going to look like for it. We didn't really know where it would end up taking us and why. But ultimately, we knew that it was going to be an important part of the puzzle. And then as we saw some of these other passives really, go crazy over the last year, it became really clear that having a manufactured device, and not just from us, it became clear that just having, pre-configured devices that fit a spec was really something that we wanted to be about. And ultimately, we got into that thing where we started wrestling about whether we were going to, allow DIYs. DIY built this network. Well, two things are going to be true come this time tomorrow. When you look at the numbers on the KPIs, you're going to see the number of storage providers drop significantly. It's going to drop from 3,800 down to 26, 27, something like that. you won't see the capacity drop all that much because the people that are, exiting or disappearing or whatever you want to call what they're doing, the people that are unlicensed, what you're going to see is they really aren't providing all that much storage to the network. They're just sort of, punting a little bit of storage, I guess, to see how it works or blah blah blah. So they're going to be going away, and we will end up with what we consider to be the core network going forward. It's going to be somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 when it's all said and done. So that'll be our base to take off to the next, exponential step forward as we really drive things up the road. The second thing, though, is that we said all along, when we decided to allow DIYers to go ahead and have this place, going forward, that we would build a software that would be commensurate with the Examiner. And, of course, a lot of people would, chime in and say, well, that's all really cool, but you know what, I don't need any of that. I just want the basic, and that's all I'm ever going to want. And you don't even have to try and talk to me about the full because I don't want it. I don't want it. Well, the truth of the matter is, I keep saying this, you're going to want it, and probably at some point you're going to need it. We aren't anywhere near that place yet of saying that it's required, obviously. It might be a year from now or whatever. But what's going to end up happening as we start to onboard storage, we have a number of different initiatives we've got to undertake. And one of the biggest ones is compliance, right? One of the biggest things we've got to do is go out to somebody like Vanta, and work with them to get various levels of compliance around the globe. And some of them will be fairly easy to acquire and get the stamp put on there. They all require some sort of payment to a degree, and some will happen pretty easily and so forth. But some are going to require a little bit more. They're going to require more auditability. They're going to require a little bit more in the way of like KYC and stuff like that. And yeah, every one of those things has a potential to winnow out the crypto natives in our project, but make it a much more powerful thing for the people who are here, who just want to earn passive income and they want to do it the right way, and they don't want to have crazy, weird, illegal shit on their stuff, and they don't want to, be in those weird places. So compliance is going to be a really enormous one, and compliance will not be baked into the basic software at all. It literally can't be, right? So that's probably going to be the biggest one that is going to cause people to recognize, oh, I want that high value data. I want that medical data. I want that good data that they're starting to get right now. And so I'm going to go ahead and pick up that software. The second thing that comes down that path is this whole idea of being able to do remote access. And with remote access is, if I bring a guy on who's a consultant and he says, well, look, I'm going to have 1,000 units, he's going to need to have some capability to manage those thousands of units. And it's not going to be easy to do that in TeamViewer, right? Or whatever. So that's part and parcel of what we're building. We're building an MQTT messaging system that will allow us to use our single sign-on service that we currently use, that will allow you to aggregate all of your assets under one roof. And somebody like that with 1,000 of those providers will likely also have hundreds of relayers that they need to manage, and they all have to be under one sort of console application so that it allows them easy access. So that's going to be a really important one for people that have multiple units. And we're starting to see most of our providers tend to have more than one, so that's a big one that comes down the pike. The next one that comes up is this whole accounting notion. So one of the things that we know is the way the contracts work on our thing, they're a little opaque. And, yes, you can go and validate and verify and audit a contract when it's all said and done after a contract terminates and concludes, goes into renewal or whatever. It's certainly possible to look back on the blockchain and see what happened. It's not easy, but it's definitely a thing, and it can be shown on a screen. We have a lot of work to do there, and that's being upgraded every week into the new versions that get automatically spit out to the examiners. But we expect to have a full-blown accounting, setup where we tear that contract down and really show what's going on. Because right now what happens is funds are actually put into outputs that are, not easily seen, and then the wallets deduct or increase with micropayments over the life of the contract in a way that's not at all easily understandable. The only way you can do it really is you just have to note your balance at a certain period and then come back and look at your balance a certain period away, and then you can get some kind of information that will help you in terms of the accounting. Well, we're coming up on 1 year from this big mass of units that went into the wild, and then the both Examiners and the DIYers. And the deal there is that, in a lot of the domiciled or jurisdictions that people are domiciled in, there's going to be some tax implications that are coming up for them. And those tax implications are going to need a lot more powerful accounting and reporting. Again, that won't be in the basic version. So, if you're willing to go ahead and accept what currently exists there, well, then it'll work for you and you can continue on. Otherwise, you're going to want to buy an Examiner, or, well, I'll just say it like that. You're going to want to buy a quote unquote Examiner. I'll tell you what I mean by that in just a minute. So that's there. And then we have a whole bunch of other features that we're focused on right now that have to do with telemetry, push-pull in terms of, stats, the support stuff, things like backing up, the metadata. Right now, backing up the metadata is a pretty grungy process, but we expect to be able to turn that into something pretty slick that will actually back up to our cloud. So there's a whole bunch of features, and if you've paid attention to the Examiner UI for the last year, what kind of work we're putting into it. That it's improving every single week, and so you can expect to see that happen for the next 2 years. It's just going to keep getting better and better and better and better and better. So I think everybody who's serious about this will ultimately end up on an Examiner. So what is the second announcement? Well, the second announcement is we've been putting the Examiner DIY software through its paces with a couple of testers. We've been getting really good results, and we feel confident now in saying it's ready. We can launch it. So tomorrow it will become live on the website where you can go and purchase an Examiner full license, or if you have an Examiner full license that you already purchased, you can actually tie it together with a couple of small caveats. It turned out when we looked at the numbers of people who already bought and we looked at the numbers of people that are already providing, a pretty overwhelming majority are already Linux based anyway. So you guys are ready. I mean, you're good to go. And what will end up happening though for Windows people is we will be able to run you inside of a virtualized environment, a VM inside your Windows box. We're building that out right now to make it easy to do. And then ultimately what ends up happening is that your provider instance ends up running on a Linux instance inside of your Windows box in case you need to run some other mining software or something else that's going on. We really prefer that not be the case, but we understand that some people are just going to continue down that path. The good news about this is, so $450 is what we posted the price for the full software. And if you go back and you tear apart an Examiner minus the rebates and you look at what things cost, you can see that that's, about what we charge the people that bought the Examiner hardware from us when it's all said and done, once they get the rebates, ostensibly. So it's a good price and it works. We talked about not being sure if it was going to be a one-time or a perpetual, or there were going to be some ongoing licenses. And to be honest with you, I'm never going to close the door on down the road being some upgrades that we want to charge for. There may come some features that become so valuable that ultimately it happens. But for now, we're going to say that, this thing's going to last as a one-time purchase, and we'll see how it ends up going and working out. My gut tells me that it's going to work out really well, so I don't think we're probably going to need to be stressing that. And the reason why I say that is that original thing I said earlier. Look, we know that we can get to 1 million nodes, right? And we know that 1 million nodes is probably going to be table stakes, really, to become another hyperscaler, right? You don't become AWS or Google or Azure or even, some of the bigger mid tiers until you start getting those kinds of numbers. 3,800 providers on the network is pretty cool. It's second largest in crypto, and it's pretty big, and it's pretty interesting. But it's still really just proof of concept for the real world, right? It's really not that much storage at all. And so to get up there to be like a hyperscaler, you're going to need to have 1 million nodes, and we'll get there. And the good news is not only is it not a thing, but the other side of it is that we originally said to people, if you bought, by April or whatever, you got, a nice rebate in there. I think it was 55% off of the 450. And it ultimately ended up making the $450 $199 value once the rebates kick in and you're able to pull those back. Okay, well, same as we did for the basic license, we're going to reveal today that all the Examiner full version software licenses that go out will qualify for that same rebate. Right now we have probably what amounts to 1,000 or 1,100 DIY or basic versions that are in the field that are currently running in a Linux environment that can be easily upgraded. And we're offering an upgrade part for $350. So we take the 100 out for the basic. And of course, you're going to get the full rebate as originally described, 55% off. So you aren't going to have to pony up that much at this point, and you can get into that full version really nicely. At the same time, we also have about 1,000 or 1,100 activated basic instances that are on Examiners, and we are going to allow those to also get that same upgrade at 350 and then qualify to become full Examiners in and of themselves. They will also get the rebate, obviously, because they're paying the $350 and moving forward that way. So this is how we get to the next place where we onboard the big capital raise from a partner to throw at all of those initiatives that we just talked about. That's what it's going to take to fill up your units with data. We're going to have to go out and get a few $1,000,000, and those millions are going to have to go directly to marketing and brand marketing so that people that use storage understand, A, that we exist, B, that they read white papers and see case studies and see people who have used the thing actually championing it, that it actually works. 3, that we have people that actually audit it and gray hat it so that they prove that our security and durability is better than the people that are currently out there in the traditional clouds. And then 4, to actually get people to come in and write the academic articles to show that environmentally we are far more sustainable than virtually any other data center on the planet. The good news is the people that do understand it recognize what an opportunity this is going forward. And ultimately, I look forward to meeting all of you in person at some point over the next 3 to 5 years. And I believe we will have a similar story in every one of those circumstances. So that's it. Examiner full licensing and going live with the storage. Those are 2 pretty big announcements. So I'll go ahead and open it up. If you have a question, type in the conference room 1 channel. I guess Henry can watch the events discussion channel if somebody types in there, and then I will unmute you manually and let you speak up.
It's exciting. Super exciting. What do you think the issue is with the current market and raising money from these VCs? I mean, especially in crypto. I'm just saying from experience, you think it's going to be tough, or it's actually going to be easy because you guys are actually doing great compared to the entire crypto market.
Well, I think the first thing that's always going to come out whenever we do any kind of a discussion with anybody is that crypto will be the last thing that gets brought up because it's not really all that critical, to be honest. I mean, it's a great way to lower the friction when we start paying people from country to country. It's a great way to allow for a blockchain validated ledger that can be audited publicly. So we certainly agree with those principles. But the things on top, are not Web3. They're Web 2.5 is the way I would say it. We are very forward leaning in terms of being able to move to Web3. We have a full product now. It literally is a whole product that works end to end. This is what differentiates us from everybody else on the planet, right? When you get Helium wants to sell you HNT. They don't want to buy it, right? They're not looking to buy it. They get 30 million of it every single month, and they want to dispose of it, right?
Yeah.
We got to buy it, right? We got to buy it for 4 different tranches of places that we have to pay it out. So
in terms of equity, would you be open to putting it in somewhere like Equities and for the community to also buy as well, right? I mean, that gets rid of the part that you have to see if they're accredited, but if somebody is and they go on Equities and Equities and confirms they are, then maybe they can buy some of the shares that you're trying to raise.
Then I've already done all of the legwork in terms of doing a Reg CF or potentially a Reg A plus, but more likely a Reg CF. And if we did that, then yeah, we could throw equity on both sides, SPF plus stock shares into a crowd sale. And with a Reg CF, people that, are just average schmoes that don't have accreditation and just want to throw a couple $100 or $1,000 or whatever at it, have the ability to purchase. And that is a way we might end up going.
Got it. So I'll ask 2 maybe technical questions and then I'll leave. When do you think the proof of stake is going to happen? I thought it was sometimes this year.
Well, I mean, to be frank about it, I've covered this already. The deal is that proof of stake came about not as a thing like it usually does, which was back in the day was to pump your coin price. It came about because our hash rate had dropped to a place, and I'm not going to rehash all the stuff that happened with hash rate, but we should have started the project with more than 20 petahash of hash rate. We started the project with 2. And so we ended up moving along 2, 3, 2, 3, then it dropped to 1, and then we hit under 1. And when we hit under 1, it became really nervy for us because at that point we said, well, look, somebody could go out. There's a bunch of these S11s hanging out in warehouses in China. There's some reason why we didn't get that 20 petahash. There's probably some nonsense out there that could come and, snatch us up pretty easily. So when we got down to 1 petahash, that was pretty scary. Well, when we finally started taking off, the hash rate started jumping up. It went as high as, I think, 9 or 10 petahash. And at 9 or 10 petahash, we're in pretty good shape. It's going to be really hard to attack our network.
Right.
Down at 3 to 4, where we are right now, borderline. We need more hash rate. We need to get more miners on the network.
I guess my last question is to the rest of the team, because then it's more technical. It would be great. This is more to like master. It would be great if we can get some sort of monthly reporting on the XMiner performance. People who don't check it every day or want to see how things have changed, and meaning like how they perform, changing contracts, speed, upload, download compared to maybe the whole network. That would be cool.
Yeah, that's something that we can think about. I know one of the big improvements that is either coming in the next UI release or the one after is improvements around like financial reporting.
It would be super cool if it was like an email, right? I followed Jeff's video, which is super helpful because I didn't know when these would go down or not, right? And it would worry me that it's going to go down, then my uptime is going to go below 0.99. So that helps, because if it goes down, I get an email, and sometimes I see it go down and comes right back up, then I'm not worried, right? But it'd be super cool if those reports that would be like, hey, I want to subscribe to get 1 email a month or 1 email a week to understand, how my miner is performing, what the speed is, and then what the speed is to compare to other people, how my contracts have changed, pretty cool. Yeah. All right. That's all I had. Thanks all.
What other questions do we have out there?
Hello. Good evening, good morning, whatever place you are. Can I change the HID if it dies out without having problems?
Change the what?
The HDD, the hard drive.
Change them out for what?
If it dies out.
Well, I mean, look, you own the rig. If ultimately you think the project has failed,
I don't think it failed. I just read some specific stuff on the German SAP server, and it came to my mind that the early runners are misfortunate because they are early and running the XA miner. You know, it runs 24/7. It dies out. Can I change it?
oh, okay. So look. All right, I get it. This is a little more technical, and so yeah. Look, all of these 1,000 examiners are going in. They went into production between February and May, so they'll be a year old next February. Let's just start there and say next February. Some of them actually won't be till May, but the bulk of the examiner population will have a year anniversary come February, March, that time frame. And they've typically run on enterprise grade drives that have 5 to 6 year lifespans. That's typically average right now. You can go look at, around on the net, but 5 to 6 years is typically the average lifespan of these drives. Doesn't mean some won't last 10 or 12 years, because some will. But it also doesn't mean some won't die within a year or 2 years, because some will. But the average is going to be about 5 to 6 years. So yeah, come year 3 or 4, the guys who came in later, may end up being in a situation that their drives are going to last a year longer or whatever. And it's true that right now there's not that much data on your drives that will sort of make up for that. But I don't think that's going to hold, by the way. I think that us starting to sell storage now, us starting to get out there and to do things to bring more capital into the project for marketing and so forth, are going to put us into a situation. And also, by the way, us fixing the contractor and getting the contractor working a lot better and a lot smoother and a lot more performant, a lot more durable, will ultimately allow us to continue to pump some testing data in there that we can set as a floor. So if you look at the chart right now, the chart has a yellow line that's going up and to the right. Then you get a big dive where it drops down. So it went up to a petabyte. It dropped down, several hundred terabytes. But now it's up and it's what, 1.34 or something like that? What we've targeted right now is 2 petabytes. Also, I told you in this call earlier that about 2,500 units is what we're looking at once we turn off the unlicensed providers. And we've done that already, actually. So what's going to end up happening is there's going to be a significant amount of data that are going to go on to everybody's providers between now and, say, February or March. So you're going to start with a head start. So you'll have a year in, but you'll all probably have in the neighborhood of a terabyte of storage on your drives, somewhere in that ballpark. And when they come on, the new people will be griping. They'll be saying, hey, is there any way you can bonus us extra because we didn't have the early advantage that these guys did and we didn't get here, early enough to get a terabyte on it? It's always going to be that game. It's always going to be that game. But here's what's going to happen with the new guys. The new guys are going to show up and they're going to have to live to where the storage is coming from real customers. So a new guy might show up in the Netherlands and say, hey, I'm here, I'm going to do my thing. But the customers are already locked into a whole set of providers that they love in the Netherlands, and they don't want to throw new data off to this new provider. And they're going to have a difficult time getting storage onto their rigs, whereas the old guys who have been there, established, continuous time in service, are going to end up getting the data from the customers that come in. Or let's say you're in a place where there isn't any providers and it's really sort of barren, and then, you start getting storage that nobody else is getting because you're one of the few people in that area. So I disagree with the premise. I totally disagree with it, although some of it's unknowable until we get into next year. But I think ultimately They just have to hang in there. They just have to do what they are doing right now and keeping the units up and running. If ultimately they decide it's just they don't have faith, they don't think it's going to work, they can't do it without some extra subsidy, electricity's too expensive, whatever, we'll just have to doff our cap and say, sorry, it didn't work out for you, and we'll see you next time. But I think they just got to hang in there, and I think ultimately you guys are going to be happy when it's all said and done. That said, I'm willing to accept that it might not work. We'll see.
Yeah, thank you.
We did have a question in the chat a little while ago about IPv6 and if that's on the roadmap.
Yeah, so there's really no reason why we can't actually drive that into our client software, and I have actually started that initial process of discussing and figuring out where it fits on the roadmap. And I think it's going to have to happen because there's going to ultimately be a bigger drive by ISPs into that space. We're going to see things like Starlink and other satellite systems that with rely on CGNAT. So I think ultimately we have to deliver it. What I can't really say right now is exactly where it fits in the roadmap. So I can't really say exactly when it's going to show up. The warranty transferable. Actually, to be frank about it, there's no reason why the warranty wouldn't be transferable as long as the two parties work with us to understand whose unit we're dealing with. Because if we don't actually know who bought the original unit, it gets a little tricky. But in any case, that's probably not even the big issue. The big issue is going to be the drives, right? And the drives carry manufacturer warranties that are 5 years. So, it's not a real big deal. So I think you're going to understand that the warranties are going to be something we have a real strong desire to make sure that they work for you guys. Now, I will say this. This is a call that's coming soon. We haven't got to it yet, but it's a part number we're working on. Now that we get past this full version licensing, we can focus on this. But we are going to have a part number called XCare that we're going to be selling coming forward, which is going to be like Apple Care used to be for the Apple devices. And XCare is going to provide a lot of things that right now are a little tricky. Like basically the ability for us to overnight a unit out to you as a replacement at what is typically called in the warranty business an advanced replacement, so that you don't have to be without your rig for a week, and end up suffering the downtime if something goes wrong with it. There's going to be some other things that we'll throw in with XCare having to do with support, advanced support that are, maybe having the ability to get a human on the phone, within about, 2 to 4 hours or something along those lines. This thing that we currently have in the Discord is great, but you have to recognize that that's not going to be able to be sustained when we start onboarding tens of thousands of providers. So what'll end up happening is we'll build this part number, and that will be another way for folks to ensure that those things stay active and working correctly for 5 years. Yes, it's going to cost money, but that's what happens. Everything in the world costs money. In any case, appreciate everybody showing up this week, and I hope the 2 announcements were really positive for you. Powerful stuff. If you don't agree that it's powerful stuff, all I could say is continue to be patient, because things are happening. We are hitting our milestones, and we are moving the ball up the field. So, one way or the other, this train is going to come into the station, and I highly advise that you be on the train. So there you go. Thanks for showing up, and we'll see you next time.